Mikayla Dalton's early disappointing experiences with natural family planning led to the realization that there is no one-size-fits-all solution and an appreciation for a diversity of choices in charting. While Mikayla maintains a strong focus on medical research, she firmly believes that women need more than facts. They need support. Mikayla has been teaching the Boston Crosscheck online since 2011. She feels privileged to have accompanied many hundreds of women and couples through so many different fertility experiences. She's been married for 15 years and has 3 children, plus the occasional international exchange student. She is a femtech geek, self-described. Her husband once told Mikayla that she looked like the Borg queen with all her fertility wearables on. Resistance, she told him, is futile. Please help us welcome Mikayla Dalton to the podcast.
Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Today, Emily and I are joined by Mikayla Dalton from the Boston Crosscheck Method. So I'm really excited. She's going to share with us her story and a little bit about this method that is a little bit more unfamiliar to Emily and I. So welcome, Mikayla, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, thanks for being with us. So full disclosure, because Emily and I are just that casual podcast hosts, we have done this already, people. And Mikayla was kind enough to come back and re-record with us. Emily wasn't here. It was just Mikayla and I because we had technical difficulties. We lost her interview. So we're really excited that she was willing to come back because it's a really great story. And we really want to be able to share about the Boston Crosscheck Method because it's not very widely known. And I think it would be really helpful to a lot of women because it has been really helpful to a lot of women and couples so far. So Mikayla, maybe you can start off just sharing with our listeners a little bit about how you came upon natural family planning and what your journey was like to using it and using it in the early years.
Sure. It's kind of a long and windy road to where I am now. So when I married, which was 16 years ago, when we got married, we didn't think that we had a serious reason for avoiding pregnancy. My husband and I were both Catholic. I was a revert and he was cradle. And we had read Humanae Vitae. And we're like, okay, so you need grave reasons to avoid pregnancy, and we don't have any life-threatening, life or death kind of reasons. Not realizing that was kind of like a misleading translation in the English. So looking back on it, like prudence, maybe. We were newly married. My husband was right out of college. I was applying for a green card in the US because we had gotten married. So I wasn't even allowed to work. So we weren't very well placed to start a family, but nonetheless, we started a family. And then after that baby was born, we realized that we did need some space. I'd had a difficult pregnancy. We were super duper poor. I was recovering from an unexpected C-section. It was really tough. And so we knew that NFP was our option, our Catholic option for avoiding pregnancy for a time. So I asked my OB here in the States, who was Catholic, about NFP. And she said, oh, yes, I know about it. I do teach the symptothermal method, but I can't take you on. I'm too busy. Let me refer you to somebody else who'll teach you NFP. I was like, great. So we go off and we learn NFP. And we were so clueless. We were these brand new, clueless married couple, clueless parents. Like, we had no idea what we were doing. So we trotted off to learn this NFP, and we had no idea there were different methods. right? To me, it was just one big thing. Like the NFP was just the thing, and you learned the thing. So we started out with the Creighton model of NFP, which I believe is a very fine method. A lot of respect for the Creighton model of NFP, but it was unfortunately not a really good fit for me. So even though we charted very thoroughly and correctly, I found myself pregnant at around about 9 or 10 months postpartum.
Wow.
Yeah, I was in my sixth cycle postpartum, and I was just shocked and amazed and dismayed, um, because I wasn't expecting to be pregnant again so soon after a C-section. There were a lot of challenges coming to grips with that. Um, and then when it came after that baby was born, when it came time to do NFP again, I was a little bit, what's the word? Whiny. I was whiny. That was just, and I was complaining to a friend of mine who was A, not Catholic, and B, was a guy. It's funny, he was part of a group of Catholics I was in, but he was the non-Catholic out of our group. And he was like, "You do know that there are other methods, right?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he knew it because his girlfriend was a nurse and had just written a master's assignment on fertility charting. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, there's a bunch of methods and there's Facebook groups and you should join them." I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." So off I trot to a big Catholic Facebook group for NFP users. And I discover that there's a bunch of methods. And that's how I found the Marquette method. And again, Marquette is another great method. Um, but I found myself unexpectedly pregnant again at 4 months postpartum.
Wow, Mikayla. Oh, wow.
I was in despair at that point. So, right? Yeah. I was really questioning, like, why would God do this? Why,
Yeah,
I'm trying to do the right thing. Like, why aren't I being rewarded for doing the right thing with the
right.
outcome I'm expecting? And at that point, I had just begun to train with the Archdiocese of Boston, to become an NFP teacher for the Archdiocese.
Was there a
Uh,
certain method you were focusing on at that point, or?
so the Archdiocese of Boston, the method that was offered through them was the cross-check method, which is now in our hands, and we call it Boston cross-check. And the reason I was learning through them was as I'm not a registered nurse or otherwise a medical professional. So I'd found the Marquette method. I was super excited about not having to rely solely on cervical mucus. Um, and so I was like, I want to teach, but I can't teach Marquette, but I can teach for my archdiocese. And they use the monitor as well. So this will be a good fit for me. And I call up my trainer, the lady who was working at the archdiocese, a wonderful woman, and I was in tears. And I said, "I don't think I can finish the training to be a teacher because I'm pregnant again, and this is the second time I've had a formal pregnancy evaluation, and they've told me it was a method failure in two different methods. I am a bad example for the Catholic community. No one is going to want to be taught by me because of like my experience." And she said, "No." She said, "No, I urge you to finish. You're going to be a wonderful teacher, and your experience is going to make you better at teaching. And, it's like these things can happen, and it's important to be honest about it." I was like, "All right."
I can imagine that because I think women listening to your story, I know Amy and I have talked about this. We know women and couples that have been in situations like this. It's not, you know, as common as, other situations, but it happens. And so I can imagine somebody learning a method from you and knowing your story. I would think that there could be a lot of comfort in that.
I think if nothing else, it's given me a greater sense of compassion for when people are struggling with the NFP, because I've struggled with it, and I feel like when I can present about NFP, if it comes to it and they hear about my story, then I think there's an authenticity there that, I can still present NFP as a valuable thing to do.
Yes, that makes total sense.
Yeah, I think in the early years, well, probably not for you because you had this experience before you became a teacher, but for people who come to NFP so jazzed about it, become educators, and they're just like, I remember that, like you're on the high of like, this is the best thing since sliced bread and it works 1,000,000% all the time. It's the best thing, and everyone should do this one method that I've learned. And, everyone knows, right? Because that's what you're like in the beginning. I feel like luckily boots on the ground work with people. The more you do it, the more you are humbled and you realize like, wow, I know very little actually. I have very little power over anything. And this is actually not going to be the best for everyone. And there's other things that'll work for other people that are just as great. So I'm really grateful for that. I know, we've talked about before, but it's true that, I think at one point in time, I really did think there was one method that was just superior. And that luckily I don't think it really lasted that long, thinking about how long I've been in this world and quickly seeing how, you know what? Because the more I touted that method, the more I heard pushback stories of people who did not have a lot of success with the method that I was suggesting. But they found success with another method. And it was like, you know what, Amy? Maybe the best method is the best method for you. Like that's the best method, And that was just, yeah, a lot more accurate, to be honest with you. So, anyway, yeah. Okay, Mikayla. So you're pregnant again, wanting to
Yes,
drop out of the educator program.
I was going to drop out and I was convinced not to. And I'm glad I stayed because it's been a privilege and an honor. So it turned out the Boston Crosscheck was just the best fit for my body, my presentation. It's a little bit more cautious in a way that I needed at that time. And it's still working well for me now that I'm on the other end of things. So my youngest baby now is 10. I call him a baby, and he's like this great big 10-year-old boy. But he's 10 years old, and now I'm chatting through perimenopause. That's fun. So I just had 3 cycles in a row where I peaked at around about cycle day 10-ish.
Wow.
9, 10, 11 it was for 3 cycles in a row. And then it was day 17, and now I'm on day 30 and still waiting. So I'm a little bit mad at my, I'm like, just come on. Just pop out that egg. Like, I just want to, yeah, I'm waiting for my luteal phase to start, like quite anxiously now, but this is where I am. So um
I think
I'm
that just goes to show how this method and lots of methods can take you from one stage to the next, and it can still work. It can still work for you.
yeah, and I'm with I'm with you in thinking that there's no one method to rule them all. Like there's no, like there's a perfect method that's going to be the best fit for every woman at every stage of their lives. So I'm open to switching. So far, my method is still doing really well for me. So I'm not looking around for anything new, but I'm always happy to be like, oh, if you like this method postpartum, and then after that you think it's a bit much, then you can switch. If you like this method in regular cycles and now you're in perimenopause, you want something else, that's, go for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a great point. Yeah.
So after you started teaching, what was that like? How did you kind of involve? So you started teaching and you had 3 little ones, like really little ones, Mikayla.
I was teaching, I remember I had 2 in diapers all at once, and it's a bit of a blur.
Yeah. Yeah.
That time is a bit of a blur, but I was teaching online. So I
Okay.
think I'm one of the trailblazers of doing NFP instruction. Back then, that was pre-Zoom, so I think we were using FaceTime or something similar.
Okay.
That. But my early experience of learning NFP, we had to hop in the car with a newborn infant and drive for 45 minutes to meet our instructor and
Right.
stay for an hour and then drive back. And it was a bit of an ask for us in
Yeah.
our circumstances at the time. And as an instructor, I was like, I don't want to put other people through that. And I don't want to do it myself. I have a family, I have babies. I can't be like wandering off like for an hour to meet with some couple. Um, so I started doing it online, and That worked super well. And then when the pandemic hit, a lot of people jumped online. That was, I think, was a tipping point for NFP instruction,
Mhm.
where there's still a good amount being done person to person or like in a parish center office or something like that. But there's a lot being done online now in various ways. And that fit NFP instruction into our lives better.
Mhm.
My husband is totally on board with me doing this. He's not involved in teaching, but we run a little NFP ministry where we get supplies to couples who are in need of using a method that uses the hormone monitoring or something like that. They
Oh,
can't afford it.
that's
So
great.
he runs that with me, and he's generally kind of mildly interested in what's going on with my chart.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, that's so funny. So I'm curious before we kind of move on a little bit, what was his response after finding out you were pregnant back to back to back?
I don't think he took it as badly as I did. So he
Oh,
was more concerned because I was so upset.
oh,
Um,
right.
to to be fair, like I'm the one that has the really difficult pregnancies. I'm sick the whole time. I have all these
Mhm.
complications. The deliveries are like increasingly dangerous.
Yeah,
So I reacted more because that was my very embodied kind of experience of pregnancy and childbirth
right.
and all of that. And so his main concern was for me rather than any
Having
upset
another baby.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
He loves
Okay.
baby.
No, that's sweet. Okay. Okay. So you start teaching, and at the time, the Boston Archdiocese has this method that they're operating, the cross check method. Okay. And so, how do you get into the position that you're in now, and how does it transition out of the diocese hands? Maybe kind of explain a little bit your position now, too, and how that all happened.
Okay, so I'm currently the president of the board for Boston CrossCheck. The method that the Archdiocese was offering in-house was transferred into lay hands. So some of the instructors got together when the Archdiocese closed the NFP office. And this was done, there was a period of time in Boston where the archdiocese under the archbishop at the time needed to tighten its belt. And I'm sure you're aware of the scandals that came out of Boston and the huge amount of money it cost the church. And, rightfully so. Those people deserved to have some kind of compensation, in my opinion, for the injustice that occurred. Like it's just terrible. So I don't begrudge it one bit. But it did cause belt tightening that affected all of the faithful as well. And so when the NFP coordinator for the Archdiocese, who was working part-time, uh, took a redundancy package, the Archdiocese closed that program and transferred some of the basic duties to the marriage and family ministry. They're wonderful people that work there and they do the best they can, but it's not the same as having a dedicated NFP office with an NFP, like a part-timer running classes. And we didn't want to see the method disappear. Um, we thought it offered something unique and valuable. And so even though all of our instructors, we could have gone off and become instructors in other methods, we wanted to keep it. So the Archdiocese transferred it into our name, and it's chugging along quite nicely. I'm really pleased.
That's
We have a nice
amazing.
stable of instructors, and it's a small method.
Mhm.
We're not making plans to grow really quickly. Um, in From what I've seen, managing very fast growth comes with a lot of challenges that we would rather avoid
Mm.
in terms of just institutional challenges and quality control and things like that. So we're growing, but we're growing slowly, and we're fine with that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's how I got to be in the position that I'm in now. Yeah.
So, how long has it been in the lay hands?
Oh, that is a very good question. Let me look that up for you to find a year. I think it was 2019. One sec.
Oh, you're good.
I've got it.
I know it's 2025. It's so funny when people say like 2017, 2018. Now I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, like that was yesterday. I'm like, wait a second. That was like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. That's crazy. Oof.
I just had a conversation about that today. It really is mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was 2019. 2019.
2019 when you guys
Yeah.
took over. Okay.
So right before COVID, and then I can imagine how that was the transition for online. I'm sure it all kind of went just
Kind of
directly
smoothly.
that way. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, COVID was challenging for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. But for NFP instruction, it was actually a little bit of a positive boost kind of into the more modern world of offering this kind of service.
Right. Offering instruction. Yeah. Okay. So for our listeners, why don't we explain a little bit what is the Boston cross-check method? We've talked before on this podcast about how when we talk about NFP, we're talking about a couple things, right? This is why we use the term NFP, is because we're not just talking about knowing your body and then planning intercourse how you so desire to plan intercourse, using condoms or whatever it is. Like, no, we believe sex is a specific act that images God, is supposed to, act in a certain way. There's also the physiology of just our bodies. And so we've talked about the biological markers, right? Men are always fertile, women are not always fertile. When they are fertile, we have these markers that are external that we can measure to know where we're at in our cycle. So we got temperature, we got mucus, we got the monitors that check hormone levels. We've got what else? Temperature, mucus, monitor. What am I missing?
Position
Position
of
of
the
the cervix. Thanks, Emily. Yeah, cervical position. So what is the Boston cross-check? What biomarkers are being tracked with the Boston cross-check method?
We can actually use all of those that you just mentioned.
Oh, okay.
So it's it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure to a certain extent. When we do the method instructional program, which is the basic teaching program for women in regular cycles, or that's what engaged couples will come and do, it lasts for a year. We have these 4 teaching sessions, and over the course of that year, they have follow-up from their instructors. And the first couple of sessions will talk about our 3 primary biomarkers. So that's cervical fluid. We call it fluid because the M word sometimes skeeves people out. So, um,
That's
so
true.
Yeah.
we went with cervical fluid. I thought about hydrogel, which technically also applies.
That's funny.
Not work. So, cervical fluid, basal body temperature, and for that we offer support for traditional oral temping or the temp drop wearable, and hormonal monitoring through the Clear Blue fertility monitor. So those are our 3 primary biomarkers, and we usually will teach all of them to these people doing the regular course so that they'll at least have had instruction in them all, but they may elect not to use them all. So we encourage them to pick 2 at least, because that's the cross check in our name, the Boston cross check. But sometimes they pick all 3, sometimes they pick just 1. With some caveats. So in addition to those 3 primary biomarkers, we also support the use of just LH tests.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes people want to use cervical fluid temps and LH tests, and they don't want to be using the monitor. They don't feel like that's necessary. Support for the Prove PDG tests for people who want ovulation confirmation, but who don't want to use temps or find temping difficult.
Okay.
And we offer support for the use of cervix position. But because there's not a lot of research on cervix position in terms of family planning rules, it's more of an additional, like, added information rather than any rules applying based on that particular sign. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
you kind of pick up and drop biomarkers as you need.
Okay.
I
So-
love that. Yeah,
on.
go ahead, Amy.
No, go for it.
I love that you described it as a choose your own adventure. I think of so many women that create their own adventure on their own. And it's because they do want, I love the term cross check. They do want to cross check. And so it really, I didn't know about this method until being introduced to you. And I can think of so many women and couples that I feel like would be a great fit because they're already doing a little bit of a few things. And so if they had an instructor and doing those things, I think that they would feel that much more confident. So I'm so happy to know about this to be able to promote as well.
Nice. Yeah, you can send them to us. I think it can make a difference just to know how everything fits together so that you're using things in an evidence-based manner in a way that makes sense for each biomarker and together. There are sometimes we send people to other methods as well. So, like I said, there's no one method that's right for everyone. And so sometimes like our fluid system, so our cervical mucus system, that's not as detailed as Creighton. It's not as systematized in like the tiny gradients. So there's no like 6PC and 8 when we don't have this the 2, 4, 6, 8 kind of designations. And it's not as personalized as Billings, right? Where a woman can just pick her own words. So you might say, "Oh, today my fluid observation was bubbly," and that means a certain thing, but we just don't have that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is
Um,
great. I think this is really, it's fascinating.
So, sorry, I'm a little curious then. So, how do you guys coach people to observe their time of fertility and infertility based on cervical fluid? What do you say?
Cervical fluid, what we have is a simplified system because it is designed as a cross check and not a standalone. So we have three basic categories of fluid. We call them D, M, and W for dry, moist, and wet.
Oh,
But
okay.
it entails, you could call them anything. We just had to pick something, right? You could
Right,
call them
right,
high and peak. You could call them 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't matter.
right.
Um, but the dry is basically nothing. Like you don't see anything, you're not feeling anything.
Mhm.
The middle category, the M category, that's what your sticky, pasty, creamy, moist, smooth kind of visual and sensation observations. And then that W category, the most fertile fluid, that's your clear, your stretchy, your slippery, your wet, your watery
Mhm.
good stuff. Um, so they're the three basic categories. They can be used to open the fertile window. Um, as can a monitor high, can be used to open the fertile window. But because Boston Crosscheck originally came from a symptothermal method background, before we incorporated the hormone monitoring, we also take the symptothermal double check approach, which is using an algorithm based on the woman's prior 12 cycles to
Oh, okay.
also open the fertile window. So it just depends on what happens first. Do you hit the algorithm day first, or do you hit a monitor high, or
Okay.
are you seeing M or W fluid first? And whichever
Okay.
one you see first is going to open that fertile window for you.
And what closes it?
The cross check rule. So that's when you're doing your peak count for the monitor or for fluid, and you're looking for your high temps.
Okay, that 3-day high temp check. Okay. Um, for anyone who is like listening to this episode as your very first introduction to NFP, everything she said might have been just been like, this does not sound simple. I have no clue what she just said. What am I doing? Go back, listen to other episodes, and know that like they don't start from there. So when you're working with someone, they walk you through step by step. Yeah, just don't be intimidated by any of that because I'm like Emily and I are we're tracking right with you, Mikayla. But I'm like, yeah, I'm just imagining this like young 22-year-old, and she's like, what? What am I doing? What's happening here?
I
So
do
Yeah, there's
remember certain methods feeling like, I can't do this. This feels like I need to be a scientist, you
right,
know? And
right.
so I know that feeling for
Yeah,
sure.
that's totally just a normal new feeling, just as an
Very.
FYI. Yeah, the more
Yes.
you get, the more you know your body. It's really just, especially for like for women, right? The more you know your body, the more you know what your signs are telling you and how to interpret that. On that note, actually, Mikayla, it'd be interesting to hear. So, did you guys learn? I know you read Humani Vitae, you and your husband, before you got married. But you didn't know there were a lot of methods. So maybe you didn't know. Like, did you know anything really about your body before you got married and your fertility?
no. And look, I mentioned that I'm a revert. So when I was raised Catholic in a kind of nominally culturally Catholic family, but I went to Catholic school from first grade through 12th grade. Catholic school the whole time. And I remember, and I loved my school. I really loved my school. We did have health class. And I remember seeing a picture of the reproductive system, but there was no information about how that applied to our lived experience. We never learned to chart. Like, of course, the school isn't going to touch charting for family planning, but we never learned to chart to just know when our periods could be expected.
Right.
And I look back on that, and I'm like, as a 17-year-old girl in 12th grade, we had a class, all the year 12s were taken to the hall, and we had a woman come and talk to us about Kegel exercises and pelvic floor health.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's great, but why did we never learn how to chart our cycles?
Hmm.
It was a girls' school. Like I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
that's
I look
ironic.
back and I think, oh, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I had no clue. So when I was learning, it was all brand new for me as well. I hadn't heard about the hormones that work. I hadn't heard about the luteal phase, post-ovulation, anything like that. It was all brand new for me as well. Yeah.
And so your mom, you never learned anything from your mom either? Yeah. Okay.
No.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I just wanted to know as a little side note there. So I guess in your hindsight too, maybe sorry, one little question still related to that before we move on is, when you recommend now, well, I'm curious if you would be in the same boat. I'm assuming you will be, but I think a lot of teachers, as you teach, right, and you interact with the late 20s, 30s, mid 30 woman who comes to you, you share a little bit of information, and her jaw drops, and she's like, no one ever told you about this. Or she starts crying, like, hello, me, when I first learned it too. And you're just like, I'm just so sick of meeting all these women who have no idea about their body. And then you pivot to like, let's tell young girls so that we can stop meeting older women who don't know anything about their cycles and how you ovulate and what your period is and what's healthy and what's unhealthy. So would you say you've kind of also fallen into that of like, wow, we really need to advocate and help young girls? Or are you, I guess, more or less content with the way things are?
No, I'm a big supporter of change. So when you speak to my dear friend Christina next week, she has some courses particularly geared to tweens and teens to prepare for their first period, to understand what's happening, and then to chart through their early cycles. And I mean, I taught my daughter as well. She's 14.
Mm.
So she's very cute. She wears the temp drop just like me. So we're matching at night. She's got a little armband. And
That's so cute.
I love that.
That's so
but
cool.
it helps. It helps just in a sense of understanding your emotions.
Yeah.
You know,
And making it normal,
Yeah.
right? Like you are normalizing this for health. And then if she's called to marriage, this is not going to be foreign to her. Praise God.
Hmm.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
I see more happening in the NFP sphere now with preparing young girls for entering into this stage of life, and for helping them through that just didn't exist 15 years ago when I started, just didn't exist. So I'm hopeful that things are improving, but I also know that they improve slowly.
Hmm.
Um, so I know that when you're trying to approach, say, Catholic schools and say, hey, can I do a presentation on fertility charting for health? A lot of schools are very reticent to even go anywhere near there because of the implications that it has for reproduction, or parents might be upset and maybe they should be the ones to teach it, which would be great if parents were teaching it, but by and large, they're not,
Right.
because they don't know any more than I did before, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what I really do love. I think my favorite model, and maybe I'm biased because Emily and I have taught a class, and I created a class specifically for moms and their daughters for that very reason, because it was like, look, I'm not trying to hide anything from you, parent. Like in fact, I want you to be here because I'm going to teach this 6-week class and then I'm gone. You're here in that child's life for the rest of their life. And I remember pitching it to Monsignor, like in that way of like, look, when we open it up to the parents, then the mom who really wants this, quote unquote, for her daughter, but is slightly ignorant herself or wholly ignorant herself, can come and learn kind of indiscreetly along with her daughter. And then she can have the confidence to carry on that conversation moving forward. So I don't know. I feel like, that is one of the things that, and our church teaches that, right? Like parents are the primary educators, but you can't teach what you don't know and what you don't feel comfortable with. And so we know that majority of Catholics are contracepting. They don't know what the church teaches. They don't know the truth about their bodies. It's an uncomfortable topic. And so, yeah, how can we empower the primary educators to have those conversations without making, without rubbing it in their face that they're ignorant or that there's something wrong with that, like kind of, yeah, the truth and love approach as best we
Right.
can.
No one should ever be made to feel bad for not knowing this because they were
Right.
never taught.
Right.
I teach medical professionals who will sit there and they'll say, I never learned this.
Right.
Doctors and nurses who went all through med school and somehow they just didn't cover this, in any kind of significant detail. And I'm like, well, now you know. So it
Right.
isn't that you be excited.
Yes.
Maybe call your med school and try to get some money back. I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, that's a real shame. So why did you spend 4 years doing? Yeah, it's crazy. That's just so crazy. Okay, so who is Boston Crosscheck for? Is it for the regular cycling woman? Is it for the woman with irregular cycles? Are we postpartum? Are we nursing? Where are we at? Are we new? Are we working with young girls? Who's the best population?
Okay. So we get a lot of postpartum women. Typically, they'll have already learned a method, but then postpartum they find particularly challenging and they want to incorporate the hormone monitoring. Or they haven't learned a method before, but they've just heard that this is good for postpartum. And so we have a lot of postpartum women. We get a decent number of engaged couples through like the marriage prep courses. Get a fair number of women in regular cycles. Some are coming off contraception. I love seeing this. We'll get contacted by a woman that's had an IUD and she's like, I'm going to get my IUD out. So I want to learn something. And, that's a very kind of scary and exciting time for her. Perimenopause, we don't get as many women in perimenopause, but I suspect that is likely because at a certain age, at least historically, up until this moment, I don't want to make any judgments about people right now, but up until this moment, you mentioned that a lot of Catholics are contracepting, which is true. A lot of Catholics who used NFP in their earlier lives do tend to have sterilization procedures and things like that, or they might need a medical hysterectomy as they've aged. So I think there are just fewer women charting through perimenopause historically. Um, some give up charting as well. Once you hit a certain age, you think your chances are pretty low, and they actually statistically really are. So
Right.
at some point, you can relax and let it go. Maybe I think I'm going to chart right down to the last egg.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah. Well, Mikayla, I think with your history, I wouldn't blame you. I'd understand a little bit of caution there.
Yeah. It's really for everyone.
Okay.
We have cheaper options for people who are on more of a budget, and if people have a lot of money to splash out on charting supplies and things, and we can just like pile things on to their heart's content. So, yeah, I think it is for everyone. In terms of teenagers, we require that if an instructor is going to teach a minor, that they need to have the parents' written permission.
Oh, good.
In order to do that. And there's that. So if you're Catholic, it's one of the USCCB approved methods. So if your diocese is one of the dioceses that participate in the USCCB's NFP program, then we're one of the methods that can be offered through the archdiocese, or somebody's diocese. But I've worked with many people who are not Catholic. We leave that up to each individual instructor, like what they're comfortable with working with.
Right.
So me being a revert, I'm pretty thick-skinned about things. So if I have people coming to me who aren't Catholic, I'll have a very real talk to them about how this method relies on abstinence in the fertile window. And that's what efficacy expectations are based on. And if they're going to be doing anything else, I'll talk to them about the implications of that in terms of effectiveness. And our course does have aspects that include Catholic teaching, or the natural law principles that undergird Catholic teaching.
Right.
So we never impose that on anyone. The Catholic teaching portion is required to be presented when we are working through a parish or diocese, or it's a Catholic marriage prep.
Mhm.
At other times, if somebody wants to decline hearing about it, they can decline. I'm not going to make somebody sit there while I present this to them, but I always offer. Some people are curious, even if they're not Catholic.
Right.
Like, what do these crazy Catholics really think? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
People are
Right.
curious, but we're never going to shove it down anybody's throat. It's just
Right.
there. Yeah, they
Yeah.
need it.
That makes sense. Okay, so women in any season. Let's talk a little bit more about the postpartum because that is a struggle. Yeah, I know many women who do not enjoy. I mean, they've had experiences like you, Mikayla. Like your experience is not unique. I mean, I've heard that before, and that's hard. And it's okay that that's hard. It's right that that's hard. You just had a baby. You were just pregnant. You just had a baby. The first year is so demanding, and you find out you're pregnant again. There is no woman. I mean, I don't think any person I can think of in their right mind that would fault any woman for being like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Like that's not, singing hallelujah from the mountaintop. Like it's okay if that's hard news. You know what I mean? So yeah, to have an option for women. And I think to Emily's point, like, oh yeah, I know so many women, right? We've said this before on the podcast. When you ask them what method they use, their answer is I use all of the methods because they just feel like they have done from their experience in their heart, they feel like they have really followed these methods to a T and they still get pregnant. And so, yeah, so they just want to know all the biomarkers, do all the things. And so yeah, how do you guys why do you think you guys have such success with the postpartum? And I also wanted to say to Mikayla, I feel like it's so providential that the Lord has placed you in this position with your past experience to be able to be there to counsel these women in their postpartum years. I imagine you enjoy that, yes?
Do. It's honestly, it's a privilege. I love my work. It can be very demanding. I almost hit burnout at one point back years past, because I was doing so much, and it can be emotionally demanding work. There's a lot at stake, it's people's lives. Um, and sometimes you get glimpses into people's lives that you would never otherwise have. So, but I love teaching postpartum. I have a real heart for that because that's where I most struggled. Regular cycles are a breeze like, compared to postpartum. So it's funny, you see all kinds of things. So I sometimes see couples and they're very concerned about getting pregnant soon after delivery. And so some couples say that they're just going to abstain. Like they're like, I'll chart maybe, but we're gonna abstain because we can't get pregnant too soon. And that can come with pros and cons. So sometimes what I see is that a couple will abstain for 6, 7, 8 months, and then it gets old. And they're getting a little bit more sleep maybe, or they're feeling a little better, and then they're like, oh man, all right, we don't want to just flat out abstain anymore. Let's start charting. And it's right when their fertility is ramping up again. So they're like, let's do NFP, and then they have a whole bunch of fertile days. And statistically, I always tell people, statistically, if you want to flat out abstain to avoid pregnancy, it might be better to use NFP for the first few months and then start abstaining once you hit that 6 month mark or something.
Right. Right.
But what I've learned is that risk isn't just statistical risk, right? So we have numbers and we have a certain amount of things we can say about risk that are objective. Um, but risk isn't just that. Not everybody is making decisions just purely based on numbers, right? Because our decision-making process, similar to in the medical world, when you're deciding, oh, do I want this procedure or do I want that procedure? It's not just statistics based. It's your values and your priorities and your lifestyle and your budget and all of these other factors come into it. How you're going to feel about any one particular option. So I've learned, and we teach all of our instructors to do this, to present all the options, talk about how this increases or decreases risk. And if we don't know by how much, we say we don't know by how much, right? It could be like just 0.2%, or it could be 2%, right? And so everything's going to come with pros and cons. right? The more biomarkers you decide to use, the less likely you are to have a method failure pregnancy, right? So you'd think everyone would want to just bring in all of the biomarkers, but the more biomarkers you use, it's going to be more effort and or more cost and or more abstinence, right? So the right fit for any particular woman or couple postpartum is going to vary by each example. So sometimes people find themselves relaxing as postpartum goes on, right? And they're more open to having another baby because they feel like they're getting it more together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people are very strict
Mm-hmm.
about their need to avoid like well into regular cycles
Mm-hmm.
after that kind of wacky postpartum transition, which I liken it to being out on the ocean without the anchor of your period to help you
Mm.
be able to stop and get your bearings. It's just like this wash of hormones waving, and you're just bobbing along on this ocean of potential fertility.
That is a great way to describe it. Sometimes I just remember that feeling of I just want to start my period so I have a point of reference because time goes on and you can't make heads or tails sometimes of what is going on. And if you're not menstruating, then you're not fertile that whole time. So, but in the moment, you don't know that. Anyway, yeah, that's a great description of that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, it's a good analogy. I think it's you can only Emily and I were having this discussion recently, Mikayla, but there's so many things that you'd love to prepare people for, and I feel like as far as expectations for what the marital relationship is going to look like after you have a baby, that would be a really great part of like a marital prep course, which it sounds so like, oh, you don't need that information until you get there. But it's like, no, if we're really like setting up expectation, I think it's just really helpful to know, hey, so after you have a baby, you like the couple, okay, her body. So you've had a baby, you've been pregnant, meaning you're not ovulating, you're just growing the baby. Okay. Baby comes out. Your body, as we've talked about before, right, is just trying to get back to ovulating because that's what it does in the reproductive years. But if you're nursing, right, other factors can be suppressing this, right, where your hormone levels are. So it's like if you're nursing, right, that can be fighting the hormone level rise. And so that's suppressing ovulation and how frequently you nurse, what that pattern looks like. And that varies from one woman to the next. So that's not standard across the board either. Your sleep, your stress, your nutrition, all of these things can impact your cycle. Basically, you are recovering. Your body is trying to replenish, renourish so that it can go through and ovulate again, which takes a lot actually to ovulate. It takes a lot of things working right. So I think that some women, and I probably was in this category too. I'm not sure, maybe not 100% because I kind of knew how the body worked. I was already teaching NFP at the time, but like you can be so sidelined by postpartum and by the length of postpartum, just within that first year, right, Mikayla, of like, what's happening emotionally, physically, what's going on here? And then you're bringing that into relationship. You have this new baby and you have this spouse and your intimacy is going to look different. And what are our goals? We're honoring God with our bodies, with our marriage. It can just be a lot. And I think just like letting people know that that like, hey, you don't really know until you experience this, but just so you have a little heads up, when you get to that point, it might be a little challenging. So reach out. Here's some contact information for different people, and you can get some support through that because you'll get through it. It'll be a great opportunity for growth.
Oh, and I would say, like, for couples that go through infertility, I don't think you're even like worried, quote unquote, about the postpartum time because you've tried all this time to have a baby. And so you're not even thinking about the postpartum time. I feel like, regardless of what you know, until you're in it, right? And then when you're in it, you're like, okay, this needs to be managed. And it can be managed, but I just feel like so often it's work, 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 work to try to have a baby, and then, oh, like this was not part of this whole baby process that was being thought about.
Right. And you might know lots about like you might have had to have a lot of intervention, and you're like, oh, letrozole and trigger shots and like all of this stuff, but then nobody's stopped to give you the information about what comes after. Yeah. My husband and I joke a lot about marriage, that when we got married, it was super romantic and we got married very quickly. And we were all on fire, Catholics and so on. And we joke that, having read JP2 a lot, we were all in the love, love, love. And then we got married and had children. It was responsibility.
That's
Yeah.
funny, Mikayla.
So cute.
Yeah. I think it can be sometimes a little bit like that for some people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then, oh
Very
boy.
cute.
Oh boy. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so postpartum. Yeah. So that, I think that's just, I guess, something I wanted to put it in context, right? It's like your body's trying to get back to cycling. And it's a really great time, if you hadn't been working with a NFP teacher, to start working with someone, because you've got a lot of things that you're doing. Like, don't put all the weight on your shoulders. Like, working with someone who's been there before. We've interviewed a midwife recently, and one of the things I really enjoyed about having her on was just this reminder of, like, that midwives used to be the norm. Like, they're not actually the oddballs. The oddballs are like the way we do it now, because that's new. We've done this before, which is just women who didn't go through 4 years of college in the village helping other women have babies because they've all been through it. So there's something to training. We love training. We love certifications. We love having knowledge. And there's also, like, I've seen this like 50 times. Like, this is normal, like, or 1,000 times, or, a million times. Like, I know what normal is. And I think working with NFP teachers who've been doing this for even just a couple of years, to be honest with you, like, there's, like, women are somewhat unique, but we're also kind of not. Like, I know I started to see, like, the same thing all the time and hear a lot of the same thing all the time. I was like, oh, like, you'll be fine. Like, what are you worried about? Or like, oh yeah, I recognize this. Like, we need to get you some help here. And so I think that is definitely wonderful to have, like, a slew of NFP teachers who are working a lot with women in the postpartum phase, because they can help instill confidence in women who might not feel very confident in identifying their biomarkers during that time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. There's always this I don't want to say it's a tension, but there's like a push and pull, kind of between professionalizing NFP provision, which is really good in some standards, but also in kind of over medicalizing it when it's something that pretty much everyone can get a handle on. But I think postpartum is not the ideal time to be kind of DIYing it or self-learning, because you don't know what you don't know. And you might have lots of experience charting regular cycles and then be blindsided by your postpartum experience. Or you might have gone through postpartum a few times, but that's not the same as an instructor who's worked with 500 postpartum couples and has like this whole institutional backup for tricky cases. So usually, given that postpartum is a particularly kind of high stakes time to be practicing NFP for family planning, then yeah, I think that really getting an instructor that's a good fit for you in a method that's a good fit for you is vital, because otherwise it's difficult and there's a lot at stake. Yeah.
When it comes to instructors, I think this goes without saying, but it sounds like this is a personalized approach, like one-on-one instruction. Are there group settings, or how does that go for a couple or a woman that's interested in the method?
Most BCC instructors will be doing a personalized one-on-one, just the instructor and the woman or the couple. Some do offer group classes. So I know that we have an instructor couple, a husband and wife team, who are teaching through the marriage course that their diocese offers. Um, and we have another one that does small groups of four couples, up to four couples. But we kind of draw the line at that because BCC is really focused on that, like it's very heavily individualized, personalized. So we have standardized materials that we're working from, but the way they apply to each person is tailored towards them. So we've tried to hit this little, for our method, a sweet spot between standardized materials, but also personalized delivery. So yeah, not a lot of big group classes, and we won't do pre-recorded videos either.
That's a
Like
great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
it is very much live, one-on-one. Yeah, kind of
Good.
service. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you start over the course of a year, you have 4 follow-up sessions, is that right? And is that just for the person who kind of has, isn't trying to achieve or avoid just learning their cycle? I mean, a postpartum woman, say I'm postpartum, right? I'm 2 months postpartum and I come to you. Is it 4 sessions over the course of a year? Are we meeting more frequently? Kind of what does that look like?
So this will vary on whether you learned the method beforehand. So if you had learned Boston Crosscheck and you'd done our standard method instructional program with those 4 sessions over a year, you've got a good good grounding in our method, the observation techniques, the charting, and things like that. So for postpartum, for you, what we would do is we would have an initial meeting where we go through a postpartum intro to explain the whole thing, like what's happening. And we'll talk about breastfeeding and lactational amenorrhea and things like that. And then we'll talk about, we have a slightly different approach to cervical fluid postpartum than we do in regular cycles. And we'll go through how your testing process and your charting is going to look for stage 1. So stage 1 is what some people call cycle 0. It's from the time you have your baby until your first real menstrual period returns. So that can vary a lot. Some women are like back to cycling at 3 months postpartum, and other women are 2 years postpartum and just get their first period back. And then once you hit that first menstrual period, you'll have another teaching session where we'll go over, this is stage 2. So these are your first 6 postpartum cycles. Here are the rules we're going to apply, and this is how you're going to handle the first 6 cycles.
Mm.
And then at the end of those, you'll have another formal session to exit back into the method instructional program.
Mm. Okay.
So we've divided up the formal sessions based on the stage of postpartum that you're in. And then, of course, you're always contacting your instructor as needed through the time. Like all of my clients will reach out to me whenever they get a peak or LH positive, whenever they think they're looking for a thermal shift, if they get any unusual bleeding, right? And I'll go through their charts and take them through next steps. But if someone hasn't learned Boston Crosscheck before and wants to come to us postpartum, then we have them do session 1 of the method instructional program first, because they need that grounding, and here are the biomarkers, here's how you observe and chart them before we can say, oh, here are the rules. Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Uh,
that feels very responsible.
yeah, I agree. So do you guys advise then when someone comes to you postpartum, especially if they've never done it before, I imagine, I know when Emily and I both, Emily's still actively teaching the Creighton model and I was teaching the Creighton model, that, we would advise couples to abstain for 2 weeks when they're first learning to teach so that the woman can, right? 2 weeks, Emily? Is it just 2 weeks? Yeah, a month. It is a month. Okay, it's a month. Yeah. 2 sessions. Sorry, the first 2 follow-up sessions. Yeah.
Yes.
So that woman can, understand her body, not be confused with seminal fluid, etc. And just was curious if you guys advise anyone like, hey, you might want to avoid during this time if you're trying to learn to identify biomarkers, or do you not really suggest either way?
Not usually. For women in cycles, it's because we have the algorithm as the double check, like kind of
Oh, okay.
fail safe kind of approach. But for postpartum women, the way we handle cervical fluid. So if say they're using the monitor and cervical fluid together. And I should mention this. This will be pertinent maybe to some of your listeners, but we do not recommend using BCC fluid only postpartum.
Okay. Okay.
Because it's been designed as a cross check. It means you would be relying solely on our system of cervical fluid to avoid pregnancy prior to that first ovulation.
Right.
Like after that first ovulation, your first period, it's fine. But we feel that if a woman wanted to use cervical fluid and temps postpartum in stage 1, effectively that's just using cervical fluid right up until ovulation. So we will refer them to a specialized symptom method. We will say, look, there is Creighton, there is Billings, it's Family of the Americas. Let's see which one of these might appeal to you more. Here are some instructors you can reach out to. So I just thought I should mention that. I hadn't mentioned it, but postpartum, if she's using cervical fluid and monitor, what we're doing is if the monitor gives somebody a high, they'll be abstaining because of the indications of elevated estrogen with the high reading. With cervical fluid, it's for the whole stage 1. It's an end of the day, every other day approach, right? So that eliminates the potential difficulty with seminal fluid, confusing observations. We can take them through a seminal fluid instructions, so seminal fluid elimination techniques if they want, or they can just not bother with any of that. And then the next day, ignore cervical fluid up until midday when all of the seminal fluid residues had time to go. And then that day is an abstinence day, regardless. So we haven't found that we've needed to tell somebody to just get used to observing for a certain amount of time starting out, because with the every other day approach has kind of mitigated the need for that. So most of the time I haven't had clients have difficulties, aside from the usual difficulties where they're like, I don't know if this is creamy or pasty. Can you help me figure it out? That kind of thing. But yeah, no, we haven't really needed to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think for those of you who don't know, I know we've talked about it before on the podcast, but seminal fluid is just the fluid that's present after a complete active intercourse. So it can look very much just like peak type mucus that or fluid that a woman would have during her peak fertility when she's preparing to ovulate. It looks very egg white like and create a sensation of lubrication. So being able to discern between seminal fluid and your cervical fluid can be very challenging. And so that's why I asked Mikayla, is there a time that you guys would recommend for abstaining? But the every other day, I know that's something that Creighton will talk about too, is seeing if there's seminal fluid the next day after you've had intercourse. So again, that's not something you have to figure out on your own. You're working with a teacher. So I'm trying to think here. I think
I'm wondering.
Go ahead, Emily.
I'm wondering about effectiveness and different rates that you might be able to talk about for couples that are trying to achieve and also couples that are trying to avoid.
Sure, that's a really good question. So let me first say that Boston Crosscheck, being a small method, doesn't have published efficacy figures for the method itself. It's been around since the 1970s. If you go right back to its symptothermal beginnings in the 1970s in Boston. So we are not positioned to run our own efficacy studies. They cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to run. So when you're associated with a great big educational institution like a university, it's much easier to get this stuff done. So what we do to ensure the effectiveness of the method is that we rely on published studies on specific biomarkers to base our rules on. So part of the getting approved as a method with the USCCB is demonstrating to their satisfaction that we have met all of these standards. So, standards in like principles of adult education, Catholic morality standards, but also standards of being able to show that our rules are evidence-based. So we were able to take the USCCB through everything that we do, and we say this rule is based on this seminal research and link to it there, and this rule is based on this other research here. And so that's how we can be confident that the method that we're offering has the same expectations of efficacy as you would expect based on those biomarkers in other methods that do have those studies. What Boston Crosscheck tends to do, we tend to be a little more conservative, which is why it was the method for me. What we tend to do is we say, oh, look, here's the evidence for such and such. But I have seen with my own clients or with my own experience or just with the thought experiment, what if X happens or Y happens? How could we plug this gap, right? And so we'll have funny little things that we do where postpartum, stage 1, you get a peak on the monitor. and maybe it's accompanied by a fluid peak as well. And you're like, that looks great. That looks very promising. But if that client doesn't have a progesterone-based biomarker as to confirm ovulation, we just don't trust it. So we're like, well, maybe trust but verify kind of approach, where we'll do the post-peak count, but we will actually revert back to stage 1 rules and continue to test and operate by those rules until the expected menstrual period arrives. Or if it doesn't, you just continue on as you'd started again. So we do little things like that where we're like, oh, I don't know, we think this is a bit of a weak spot. And it might not make an overall statistical difference to efficacy, but it may help one person.
I can imagine it helps women feel more comfortable just about the season that they're in and being able to trust their body a little bit more.
Yeah, so it really depends on what you like. There are pros and cons to everything we do. But yeah, for me, I liked that, like, I don't want to say it's a, after my experience with early charting, I like to be extra cautious about things in a little bit. And the method kind of lends itself to that a bit. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody feels that they need it, right? So
Right.
I have some clients where I'm like, we recommend doing this, and they're like, I'm good. I'm like, that's fine. Yeah.
I think an important point to make about, in my opinion anyway, about, efficacy studies and things is that from what I'm hearing, right, my understanding of the Boston cross-check method is that while there hasn't been a specific study done on the protocols, exactly how you guys have laid them out, everything you have designed has been based on research and on the evidence that we know of now. And just to remind everyone again that biomarkers are not a new thing, actually. Like, scientists have been studying these different markers in women's bodies for quite a while, believe it or not. And so all the methods have done, which we're grateful for. It's not a bad thing at all, but all these methods have done, they didn't create biomarkers. They just took the evidence about biomarkers and what it was interpreting, and they put it together in their own way, and they created a method. Every method has done that. No one has created a biomarker. They've just taken the evidence about biomarkers. Maybe they've studied it a little bit more, depending on the capacity of the method to be able to do that. But they've just taken what we know and they put it together, and they kind of, lack of a better word, like sell it as a package. Like, here's our method. This is how we are going to focus on cervical fluid only. We take cervical fluid and we take temperature. We take the monitor, the temperature, and the cervical fluid. Like, we combine them all, and here's what they all say together. So that is why I think a lot of women feel like they're smart and they can understand science, and they read things and they're like, oh, okay. So if I see this is what this means. And a lot of women, they probably can do this by themselves, and they probably do it by themselves. But for a lot of the times, though, if you don't have a little bit more in-depth understanding, you don't have the exposure we've been talking about to so many cases, when, not if, when something comes up that is not textbook, that doesn't make sense, it's really, really helpful to have someone there with you to explain what you're seeing and to help you interpret it, so you don't get discouraged, or you don't miss an opportunity to get pregnant and you really want to get pregnant, or you get pregnant and you were really hoping to avoid for a little bit longer. So yeah. So anyway, Emily's, I know, like, her question, totally valid, totally good. And I know she was in no way, saying like, oh, well, if you don't have all this science, it's not. It's just to point out, like, hey guys, like, all of this we know of, it's how we're putting it all together. So
I'm glad you clarified, Amy.
Yeah. Just to say, so people aren't.
I get that question a lot, actually, because we don't have a Boston Crosscheck Institute of University Family something, So, I mean, I would love to, if someone wanted to donate several $1 million, I think I could set something up. But shout out to the researchers out there, though. Like, I know that NFP, because people are people, and so in the church as well, you get sometimes personality conflicts or things go on. So people are people, and I know in the past there's been something that I've been termed the method wars,
Right.
which I think time, but life happens. But honestly, I am just so grateful to all of the people in the past decades who have been dedicating their lives to furthering NFP research. And especially it's not the situation it is now, where there's like a sudden surge in demand for femtech and everyone's really excited about fertility charting and for perimenopause health and things like that, right? It wasn't like that. You go into academia and you're like, I want to study this, like I want to do research on this NFP stuff. And good luck, getting a lot of institutional support. Good luck getting a lot of funding. It was not a prestigious area of work. So the people who did this did it because they had a passion and they were following the call to expand and improve the methods. The church asked for our medical researchers to do it, and they did it. And now
You're right.
yeah, yeah. And I found in academia quite often they usually get along really well. There's a lot of collaboration, which somehow got lost in the trenches a little bit for a while with NFP methods. Like I think people just wanted to, like they were on the my method is the best method kind of boat. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I know I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but I would say, and I'm sure Emily has seen the same thing, like even just over the 10 years I've been doing this, it's like, wow, it's so crazy from like when I started even to now, how much more collaborative everyone is. It's like as a teacher, I'm working with you. Oh, you're not really liking this. Okay, well, let me get someone on the phone from Symptothermal. Let me reach out to this person. Let's connect you with someone else because I just want you to know your body, feel confident about what you're doing. And you can do that. I believe that. I believe that we will find something that works for you. There is a best method for everyone, regardless of your season, regardless of your past experience. I think, Mikayla, your story is just such one of graceful perseverance, in trial and holding on to what you believe God to be teaching you about the truth of human sexuality and your body and the sacrament of marriage. And yeah, it's really hard to trust God in the trenches and in the really hard times. So I give you a lot of credit. I think he's probably, using you to bear a lot of fruit now, which is just wonderful to see. So
Thank you for your perseverance.
yeah, really. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. And how cool your daughter is learning all those things. I think to Emily's point, like it's just so great how normal, all those things are going to be for her. It's just great. And she'll be a little evangelist with her friends and girls that don't know anything about it. And she can share all of the stuff that she's learned too. So thank you for your time tonight. We really, really appreciate you coming back so we could record this again because I know people are going to get so much from it. I'll link to the Boston Crosscheck Method website. Where else should I send people? What other information or resources you think? Anything?
Just that website is fine. Maybe send a link to the USCCB. I feel like that's a
Sure.
resource that often undervalued because people don't know that it's there.
Great.
And it's not the easiest to navigate website I've found, but there's a wealth of cool stuff hiding on the
Yes,
USCCB pages. So I like to spruik it a little bit because there's stuff out there where like, what is the church doing? And I'm like, they're trying. Like it's
they
actually
are. That's true.
yeah.
Yeah, give them a lot of credit. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right, Mikayla. Yeah, the USCCB, the family planning section is pretty extensive. It's really great. They've had a lot of great people contribute to it. So, okay, yeah, we can link to those things. Anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with? Words of encouragement or information or anything like that?
I think I would just like to encourage people that they're not alone.
Mm.
Whether they are loving NFP and having a totally rainbows and unicorns experience of NFP, and they feel like they can't tell people because it's taken badly from people who haven't had such a great experience, you're not the only ones. You're not the
Mm.
only ones who think it's wonderful, right? And just
Mm.
has had nothing but positive influence on your life. And if you're in the complete opposite, and it feels like this horrible cross that you don't even understand why you're carrying anymore, and that the church isn't helping, and that everything you've ever been told about NFP has been wrong. Like that if you have a 7-day pre-peak baby, like all of those things, you're not alone either. And all the rest of us who are muddling along somewhere in the middle there, like we are here for each other. So when people say, what is the church doing to help? Like, what is the church doing to spread the good news or console the suffering? Well, that's us. We are the church. And so there is a whole big community of people out there, and you are not alone in doing this. I felt very alone when we started. I didn't know anybody else who was using NFP in my parish. And when I was talking to the women in the Catholic Women's Club, they weren't interested. I'm like, I could do a talk about NFP, and they're like, very nice. No. So it can feel isolating doing something that's so countercultural.
Yeah.
It's hard because we know that the wider culture is embracing at least fertility charting more and more, and that opens up the door, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But those are, beautiful words, I think,
I'm so
Mikayla.
glad I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. I think especially for, the couples who might be having that challenging time and having to practice more abstinence, and their friends, maybe they're in an age group, maybe older couple, like older as in late 30s, older, and everyone's just, we had our 2 babies, and now we're off to get our vasectomy or our tubes tied. And there you are, feeling very alone in the world of like, well, we are avoiding for another week because we're not sure what's happening. And yeah, I mean, that's just, you're right. It feels very much like out in the desert, like a Lenten experience, So yeah, I pray for those situations that they will be given, those couples, if they are out there still struggling. There's just so much available now, which is one of the reasons why Emily and I wanted to do this podcast. Is like, there are so many resources. There really should be no excuse. Like, no pastor should not have an answer to a couple that comes to them. No pastor. There is something online. There is something somewhere that if maybe the couple coming to you, they don't have a computer, you have a computer, Father, in your office, and you can offer it to them for 1 hour once a week, and they can come and sit in and learn a class. Like, there or someone else in the parish can offer their computer. Like, there is an option. There's free options. There are options you will not have to pay, and you can still learn this. So yeah, I think that was just really beautiful, Mikayla. I did not mean to add on to it because I think I just ruined it. The way you said it was just sweet and beautiful. So we should have ended it there, but this was really wonderful. Thank you, Mikayla, for being on. We'll link to those things, and stay tuned for Christina, Mikayla's colleague. She'll be on to talk about the young women's programs that she offers, the teen and tween programs. So we're excited for that too. And if you guys have new things coming down the pipeline, Mikayla, or anything else we can help you guys advertise or get out there, we'd love to have you back on. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Mikayla. Have a good night. Bye, guys.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.